Today, I think it's important to share with you a real-world scenario. This is actually a good voiceover, but it's in a poor room, and I want to show you that even in not optimal situations, we could still increase and optimize the audio with processing. Let's take a look. The voiceover submission we're going to look at today is from Aaron Giles. He's actually in Auckland, New Zealand, and he is using a Tech Zone Audio Stellar X2, which is a really nice mic. I actually am a fan of these mics. I don't own any yet, but they're on my wish list. He's going into a Focusrite 2i2 interface, and he uses Adobe Audition to record, but we're going to be looking at just the raw file. He is a client of mine, and he had a studio, but they actually moved. Now he's in a new place, and the room treatment isn't what he wants it to be. He's going to get there eventually, but in the meantime, he has clients to deal with, and he wants to deliver a voiceover the best he can until he gets that room treatment installed. So what I do is when I make a custom processing preset for my clients, in the package that I offer, I understand that revisions are necessary and often necessary. So if you get a new microphone, you're going to need a revision because it's all about the mic, the room, and the voice itself. If any one of those three change, the preset's not going to work. So he's asked me to do a revision on his preset, and then when he gets his sound treatment installed, we'll do another revision to his preset. And that's just part of what I do. I assume that's going to happen, and it does pretty often. So let's listen to his audio, and we are looking now at one of the two plugins by Waves that we have used for his processing preset. This is the F6 Floating Band Dynamic EQ, and it does a great job, and it's a really affordable price. I love the way it sounds. It's really easy to process with this EQ, but I think the biggest thing is that it has the dynamic bands as well. So it has lots of features, and it allows you to really sculpt the audio. So let's listen to his raw file in his new room, pointing your ears to that room resonance and the reflections. Let's take a listen to the raw audio first.
Welcome to the planet Earth, a place of blue nitrogen skies, oceans of liquid water, cool forests, soft meadows.
So the good news is he's got a very soft delivery, because if he was being loud and projecting, that would just increase the amount of reflections that you would hear. But you could definitely hear the reflections in the room. It's not going to be optimal. This particular video is we're talking about optimizing and doing the best we can. It's not sexy to buy room treatment. It doesn't feel like it's a good investment, but it is. It's not exciting to shop for room treatment, but it is the single most important thing that will actually increase the quality of your voiceover recording. If you have a great room, which means you are absorbing all of the high, mid, and low frequencies, the microphone is going to pick up more of your direct voice and less of your voice that hits the walls, bounces around, and then goes back into the microphone. And that's what we hear as reflections. You can get the most expensive plugins, you can get the most expensive microphone, but unless you have your room treated, it's not going to be the best it can be. So you can see the changes I've made. There is a resonance here, the number 1 frequency, a boxy kind of a mid-range for 2 and 4. There was a little bit in his voice. He had this frequency space was accentuated more than the others. So all of these things here, and I increased some of the lowest bass, dropped off of the stuff that was below his voice. But the whole goal here is to balance the frequencies to give a nice big wall of sound using all of the frequency space we can for his voice. So the next plugin that we're going to use to take care of the rest of the fixes that need to be done in this audio is the Scheps Omni channel. This is also by Waves, and if you're a fan of the channel and you follow my content, you know that this is one of my favorites. It's a multi-effects processor. We've got a preamp that allows us to do some filtering and gives us a little saturation in different flavors, which is awesome. It's got a great gate, and I'm using it in the expander mode, so it's less noticeable. Has 2 de-essers, which are great. I'm using one here, a sweetening EQ, and the F6 that we used before, the previous plugin, we were doing some corrective EQing. In this one, we're using it to really emphasize the pleasing parts of his voice and de-emphasize or attenuate some of the unpleasing parts. parts. But these are broader strokes and wider cues and smaller changes that we're using here with this EQ. And it's got a compressor, and then it has a space for another one of these. You can choose whichever you want. And what's also cool about it is you can move things around, which is great. You can change the order, which has a different end result. Let's keep the EQ on, and we're going to listen to what it sounds like without the Scheps Omni channel, and then we'll engage it. So this is with the EQ, and then we'll engage the Scheps Omni channel.
Welcome to the planet Earth, a place of blue nitrogen skies, oceans of liquid water, cool forests, soft meadows.
The saturation gives it a little bit of thickness in the low end. The expander really quiets some of the noise between the words and between the sentences. When he goes silent, we don't hear the room as much, and that's really where a lot of the reflection noise was being picked up. That's where we notice it the most, is in between the words. So the gate handles that. I'm using a little bit of de-esser in the upper 6,000 hertz range. The EQ, we're sweetening a little bit of the really high end, the air. I am bumping the clarity, the upper mids, reducing more of that boxiness, and then pumping up the low, bassy, earthy feel of his voice. But you can hear the difference when you engage the Scheps Omni channel. It brings the entire thing forward, and it feels like it's just like closer to your face when you listen to it. And then the compression on top of that, the compressor, we've got a VCA compressor, and that really tames the peaks. It's only a couple dB of reduction, so it's only working on the loudest peaks of his voice and then going right back. And then we've got a second compressor, and I'm using an opto compressor, which is much more smooth, it's much more warm, and it works slowly just to kind of keep the level consistent, and that really bulks up the volume and the dynamics of the voice, and it really always does a nice job. I use that pretty often. And then one of the final things that I do is make sure I gain stage it. So the average volume of the audio that's going into the plugins is very, very similar or the same as what's coming out, and that's called gain staging. Really important because that allows you to compare both of them at the same volume, because sometimes louder is perceived as better. So if you're listening to the processing changes at the same volume, you really get a good picture and a good idea of what has been processed and if it's better or worse. This way you can kind of compare them. Now we're going to listen to the completely unprocessed file, and then I will activate both the F6 and the Scheps Omni channel together so you can hear the big difference. Even though the room is not acoustically treated, it is not optimal, still makes a pretty big difference and a substantial increase in quality, and I think you're going to hear it. But before we do that, I just want to invite you and make sure that, if you've been on the fence about sending me your audio file, I will send you back for free an example of what your audio sounds like with a custom processing preset. It's really easy. Go to my website. There is some information about the type of audio file that I need. There's just a couple guidelines there. And then there's a form that you fill out, and it gives me some of the information like the kind of equipment that you're using, the kind of acoustic treatment you have, if you have any at all. And then I'll get back to you with, after examining your file, I'll get back to you and tell you what I've found and how you can improve. And you'll get to hear an example of what your voice sounds like on your equipment, recorded in your room with a custom processing sound. It's pretty cool. So let's check out the difference between the raw file right up against the fully processed file and see how it's optimized.
Welcome to the planet Earth, a place of blue nitrogen skies, oceans of liquid water, cool forests, soft meadows. A world positively rippling with life. From the cosmic perspective, it is, for the moment, unique.
So even though it's not a completely optimized situation, you can hear that the processing still does a pretty good job of increasing the quality of the audio. It just is more present. The frequency, I think, space that's being used in his voice is just more balanced and even and forward, has a very forward kind of a sound to it.
The only world on which we know with certainty that the matter of the cosmos has become alive and aware. There must be many such worlds scattered through space, but our search for them begins here, with the accumulated wisdom of the men and women of our species.
I've got free training available. I have courses to purchase and all the information that you need about the custom processing preset service on my website, lennyb.com. If your voice is not making you happy, if you turn on your microphone and you're cringing, you're going, God, why does it sound like this? we've got to fix that. Your voice should be inspiring you to do better and do more demos and do more spots for people and do more auditions. If that's not happening, let's make your voice sound better. Thanks for watching.